sometimes in life we might see a certain halachic detail, and we don't really pay attention to it. But if we do a little more research and ask where this detail came from, we'll see there are larger ideas at work, either larger halachic ideas, larger machshav ideas. And let's start with one of them, and I think we'll see an example of this. Like, I don't know if you ever paid attention to the fact that Shacharis and Mincha, we daven the Amidah, and then the Chazan repeats it. Somehow, when we come tomorrow, all of a sudden, Chazar Hashatz gets dropped. Right? We pray the Amidah, and there seems to be no need to repeat the Amidah. And maybe we've done this for many years, 18, 19, or 47 years, and never asked ourselves why. But maybe we do a little research into this, we'll discover that there's larger forces at work here that have a lot of other implications as well. So let's start with, we have four major issues to deal with here. Okay, all good issues. One is, we're going to see a debate about the status of Marv. So we'll try to figure out why is there a debate about the status of Marv. We're going to see a debate about what the psak should be. So we have to figure out why is there a debate about the status of Marv. Who should we rule like? We're going to ask ourselves about the implications of that debate. Why does it matter? Okay, actually, we'll start with that. Those are our major issues. Let's start right away with source one. Here we go. Tefillat ha'erev ein la keva. So the Mishnah Brachot says there's no fixed things to Marv. Now, what does it mean it's not fixed? So the Gemara has a suggestion first. Ile medibai matzli kula laila. What might it mean that it's not fixed? That's to do with timing. You have all night to say it. The Gemara says they wouldn't have used that phrase. Ein la keva wouldn't be the phrase to use. Right? Litany, let's just say Tefillat ha'erev kula laila. Just so you could pray all night. That's not what it means. What does it mean? Elamai ein la keva, command amar tefillat arvit reshut. This is like the idea that arvit is actually, it's not fixed, it's not an obligation, it's optional. And then we quote a machloket. Damar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel tefillat arvit, Rav Gamliel Amar chova, bishum reshut, Amar Abai halakha k'dev yom chova, Rav halakha k'dev yom reshut. Now notice that both on a Tanidic and Amoraic level, there's a debate if the evening service is obligatory or voluntary. So I think you read this Gemara, you have to ask yourselves right away, why in the world should Arvit have a different status than Shachrit and Mincha? They seem like three prayers on a daily basis. Why would I think that two are obligatory and one would be voluntary? That's one thing. And again, as you guys know, I'm a little partial to the Agadic portions of Shas. Everyone should be aware that this leads to a very, very famous story. Does anyone know which story it leads to? Anybody know? Who's a fourth Perka Brachot guy? Maybe one of the Shanbek guys knows this from last year. Jake, remember? You remember? Which one? Okay, very good. There is a story which Rabbi Gamliel did not like the opposition. He did not like the fact that Yeshua opposed him on this very issue. Is Mariv obligatory or voluntary? Rabbi Gamliel made Rabbi Yeshua stand up, like in an embarrassing way, and what did the rest of the sages decide to do? Yes, very good. They fired Rabbi Gamliel from being the Nasi. We're about to get the reference everyone should get. After they fired Rabbi Gamliel from being the Nasi, they wanted a replacement. Who did they hire? Very good, Moshe Klein. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. What was his hesitation, this Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah? I said, I'm very young. Young people are not so, you need a venerable beard to be respected in the world. Right, in the world of yeshivas, it's tough environment there, that big midrash. So what happened, according to the Gemara? Okay, Josh Goldschmidt, excellent. A miracle happened and he got gray hair. But then, he said a famous phrase everyone should know. What did he say? Very good. Harei ani keben shivim shana. Right, that is, we say it on the Seder night. All this is the same context, right? The same story. Okay, that is the same Agadic story. See, double, you're part of your Talmud there, huh? Okay, so that is, Josh, I guess not, sorry. Okay, but in any case, that whole story, that famous debate when they, by the way, just one other thing, some of my Agadic tangent, there's actually a very interesting educational debate in that Agadah also. Because when Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah takes over from Gamliel, he changes the educational policy. And we know what was the old policy in Yeshiva? There was a guard. Only the elite could get it. Okay, Rabbi Gamliel did not let everybody wanted into the yeshiva. When Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah takes over, he makes it an open door policy. Anybody wants to come. And indeed, this is probably the most ubiquitous educational debate throughout human history. Should we have elitist educational institutions? Should we have it open to everybody? Right, that debate is manifest right there in this Gemara in Brachot Daf Chav Zayin. And all that stems from this question, is Arvit Chovah or Rishut? Okay, so let's leave aside that Agadic story. I'm going to go look it up, Brachot Chav Zayin, range to Gemara, and go back to the debate here. Why would someone think that it's either a Chovah or a Rishut? So there's one basic approach that probably a lot of you thought of. What would you say? Why would someone think it's Chovah? Why would someone think it's Rishut? And the Rishut approach needs more work, right? Why should Mara be different than Shachrit and Mincha? Binyamin Zimmerman.
It feels like two karbanos.
Okay, brilliant. Excellent. Okay, very good, Binyamin Zimmerman. So there's a well-known debate in source 4. We'll do it outside. well-known debate in source 4, which is when the rabbis were metaking, when the rabbanim were metaking tefillah, what paradigm were they working off? What's the well-known debate? Either they were working off the avot, that each of the patriarchs prayed, and there's a pasuk which might indicate Avram prayed in the morning, Yitzchak in the afternoon, Yaakov in the evening. So maybe that was their paradigm, the avot. Or their paradigm was the sacrificial order. Because there was a daily karban, appropriate enough, called the karban tamid. Right, we say that in davening sometimes, et hakeves achat taseh beboker, et hakeves hashni taseh. Okay, that's really tell you something. How many offerings were brought in the karban tamid? Two. Every morning and every afternoon. So that, of course, raises the question, if tefillah is patterned after the karban paradigm, where does Marv come from? So indeed, the Gemara addresses this. What does the Gemara go on to say? Okay, excellent. Right. In theory, it could be by the time you get to the night. By the way, nighttime, the David Dash didn't really have its own offerings. Kind of interesting topic for another time why that is. But what if you had certain things that weren't fully consumed? Right? Maybe it was a very big animal that day, and the fire did not fully consume it in the daytime. So you'd leave it on the altar in the nighttime. That's the leftover Evarim Uptarim, and they would be consumed over the course of the evening. So what's the claim? Marv is patterned after the leftovers. Right? Shachris is the karban tamid in the morning. Mincha is the karban tamid in the afternoon. And Marv is the leftovers. Everyone got the debate down? So that's the debate in source 4. Is it patterned after the avot, or are tefillah patterned after the karbanot? So Binyamin Zerman is a very reasonable svara. Although I just want to point out one thing, even though it's eminently reasonable, the Gemara itself did not make this connection. Right, again, we have two sugya. What's sugya 1? Is Marv obligatory or reshut, or is it voluntary? Sugya 2, are tefillah patterned after the patriarchs, after the avot, or after the karbanot? There's no Gemara that says you should link those two. But Binyamin Zerman, I'll take comments in 1 second. Binyamin Zerman shows up and says, it's obvious. Why would someone think that Marv would be different than Shachris and Mincha? Well, if I go with the avot paradigm, there's no reason to think so. Yaakov was not somehow like a minor league patriarch, as opposed to Avram and Yitzchak. They're all the same. So at that point, they should all be equally obligatory. Where if I go with the carbon theme, what can I easily argue? There was a real carbon that's the source of Shachrit. There was a real carbon that's the source of Mincha. But Marv is kind of the leftovers. It's not so serious. That's why Marv becomes Rashut. I got theory 1 on the board. Okay, I just want to point out, that theory is said by the Pnei Yeshua. If you guys want to see in source 8, Pnei Yeshua says that explicitly. Okay, so we have this linkage. Let's see what you guys think. Benji.
So I would like to put my posit that the Pnei Yeshua should not have been published because it says Ema Keva in the first thing, and it says My Ema Keva, Command Amar Tfilat Arvid Rishus. So there's a clear link between when the Gemara says Ema Keva, it follows the idea of Rishus, right? And then the Gemara on source 4, it says Mipnei Ma Amar Tfilat Arvid Ema Keva. What was the source of it saying Ema Keva to begin with? Shahari Avrei Avarim V'darim Shalom Nikavru. So there's a clear link between Avarim and V'darim, Ema Keva, and Rishus. So the Gemara itself uses the same language and refers back when it says Mipnei Amar, they're referring to what they said.
Okay, Benji, sure. Excellent point. I'm mistaken. This is just for you, Benji. Everybody else can listen in. Okay, because it's a little complex. If you read the source 4 carefully, how are we using the phrase Ein La Keva to mean in that phrase? In that context? We're actually going to the reading that was rejected in source 1. Do you notice that? We said that's not the correct reading of Ein La Keva, but that's actually the way it is being used in source 4. We're not using Ein La Keva the same way. Did you notice that? Okay, that's just for you, Benji. Yeah, Moshe.
The choice code of 5 makes that distinct connection, and therefore the issue is going to be...
No, I don't think so. We'll get to 5 in a second. Ben Sion Goldman, second most serious guy in Yeshiva. Let's go, Ben Sion. Yeah, now Gavi Kolorov's most serious. He's taking over. Yeah.
I was just going to say that purely based on this Gemara, it doesn't say that you didn't have to bring it. It just said the leftovers went to all the items. So that doesn't imply Rashut. That just implies that you can say it all right.
No, but if you're responding to Benji, you're making a separate point.
No, it's a separate point.
No, but the question, what's the logic? Why should Mara be of a lesser status than Shachris and Mincha? If you go with the carbon paradigm, it's very logical. Because it's really not as serious a carbon. It's really not a carbon. It's just the leftovers. That would be a rationale to differentiate. We're looking for, forget timing. We're looking for a rationale. Okay, Yeshua Zimmerman.
According to this logic from Mara, wouldn't it seem to imply that Mara was there was because it's not really based off the Mara, rather...
Okay, so let me clarify one thing. I'm glad you raised that, Yeshua. I think this is misleading to a lot of people. Whether I say the avot paradigm or the carbon paradigm, either way I'm still saying that tefillah is, what kind of mitzvah? It's Rabbanim. This is when I know it sounds a little misleading. You might say if I'm working with carbon or avot, I'm going back to the Torah. But really we're saying it was not obligatory beforehand. The Rabbanan wanted to create an obligation. What paradigm did they have in mind? What model did they work off when they made the obligation? See that? We're still saying at that point that tefillah is Rabbanan. It's just when the rabbis make things, they might look for paradigms in our tradition. What traditional paradigm did they use to make this rabbinic obligation? Because everyone, see guys, in a second guys, everyone's going to agree that the fixed times of Shacharis, Mincha, and Marav are of rabbinic nature. Okay, everyone's going to agree with that. Binyamin.
Even the Rambam who says that tefillah is Shiur Orayta, doesn't say that you say 3 times, doesn't you say stop 1
Correct, we'll get there in 1 second. We'll get there in 1 minute. In fact, maybe we'll go, should we go out of order? No, we won't get out of order yet. Okay, so we're going to see guys, the exciting part of Shiur is going to be at the end, we're going to see is that there's another explanation. Certainly, the Pnei Yeshua's explanation, Binyamin's explanation is the simplest. Again, avot equals, they're all chayav. Karbonot equals marav is reshut. Is there any, I'm already going to set the stage for a second, guys. Could we think of any possible reason why you could go with the avot paradigm and still come up with a reason why Arvit would be less obligatory than, and we see the question? If there's any reason in the world why the Yaakov paradigm would somehow be a lesser obligation than the Avraham and Yitzchak. We'll see that at the very end of this year. Yeah, Moshe Klein. You want to wait till we get there? Okay, great. Ben Zion. Okay. Now let's try to figure out how psak should work. Who should we rule like? And I think if I ask the average guy in the street, okay, I can't resist doing this once again. Maybe I probably shouldn't do this, right? What do you think, guys? Is it inappropriate to make fun of guys in public? What do you think? I shouldn't do it, right?
No, definitely
Go
go for it.
for it. Okay, guys. You know what's great? Simi, it's not you this time, though. We're going to spread the wealth. The 8th habit of highly effective people is they can listen to Shiur Klali while reading Stephen Covey. It's just amazing. Luckily, Jeremy Wilson has that habit. He's amazing. Okay, excellent. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's figure out how psak halacha works. Okay, how should psak halacha work? Now, we just had different names, but who should win? Now, if we go to Tosfos, source 6 for 1 second. Let's go to source 6 for 1 second and see who should win, because that's an important question. Is Marv really an obligation or not? Look at source 6 for 1 second in the Ritva. Now notice, here's one thing to realize, guys. Imagine, I know it's hard for us because we're in a world where accessing text is so easy. Imagine a world before there was a printing press. Hard to imagine, right? If there's no printing press, it is extremely difficult to access text. Right? A lot of knowledge would be passed orally. Right? There's whole interesting discussions about time if you want. Has difference between oral transmission of knowledge and written transmission of knowledge. But not only that, but think about the job of copying Shas. Let's say someone told you in the 800s, I need a Talmud in my Beit Midrash. Do you mind copying Shas for me? Before the printing press, this was an amazing job. Now, the scribes took it very seriously, did a good job, but reasonably that some mistakes are going to creep in occasionally. And that's why what do we have sometimes in the Gemara? A question what the correct girsa is. You guys see this sometimes? Is it this girsa or that girsa? Because imagine a scribe copying the totality of the Talmud. It's going to be pretty difficult to get everything right all the time. Okay, so now, here's a good example. Let's read the Ritva. What just happened, guys? What did it say? Some of you noticed this. In our Gemara, there was also a debate. But who were the names in our Gemara, in our printed text? Very good. You guys all got that. It was Abaya versus Rava. What happened, apparently, in some other text? It was... Now, if you think about it, guys, what is a scribal error that's most likely to happen? This is actually pretty convincing. A mistake between... you guys got it. You guys are just excellent. Right? People are not going to... If it says, tangerine, you're not going to have a scribal error where it says, the New York Yankees. Right? There's no reason for that to happen. But it's a very common scribal error you'll have, a mix-up. Is it Rava or Rav? So apparently that's what happened here. So there are two versions of the Gersa. Was it a Rava Abaye debate? Or was it a Rav and... Surely, but this can have a lot of implications. Because if it's a Rav and Shmuel debate, we have a rule book. What's the rule book? Okay, Yeshua Zimmerman? In Shmuel, what kind of cases? Okay, it's lurking there from TBC, but not quite. Okay, very good. Shmuel apparently is very good at monetary law. So the Gemara says if they're ever debating a monetary issue, let's go with Shmuel. But Rav was very good at Asar Mutter kind of things. So in fact, the question we're going to go with Rav. Now apparently, even though it's not so clear how to divide things, apparently if you're going to categorize tefillah, it's more likely to be put in the Asar Mutter category, not in the, doesn't have too much monetary implications, tefillah. So look at the Ritva's Psak. So he says, V'hagon im pasku kamadam reshut, tefillah ki yisuriyu, v'lachak rab yisurei. Argument 1. Argument 2. V'od, tefillah d'Rabbanan, what do we say in general? It's another Psak rule. If we're not sure about biblical things, we tend to be stringent. If we're not sure about rabbinic things, we have a tendency towards leniency. So says Tosfot, I've got two great reasons that the halacha should actually be tefillah is Rashut. Again, if Rav said that, Rav should win this Rav and Shmuel debate. And since tefillah is the Rabbanan, if I don't know what to do, I should go with a more lenient approach. And that sounds pretty amazing, because if I ask the average Jew on the street, is Marv an obligation? They would say yes. But now it sounds like the reality of the psak should be that Marv is voluntary. Marv is a Rashut, Binyamin.
Why force tefillah into Yisur? It could be that neither of them were wealthy on this topic.
That is a great question. Okay, guys, it's fun to give Shiur. Okay, Binyamin wants to argue that maybe not every area of halacha fits into one of those two categories. Okay, it's a very interesting question. Especially, it's a tricky category. I have to do more research on that. I don't know offhand. When we say we follow Rav and Asr Mutter, what exactly is incorporated in the world of Asr Mutter? Is that like everything else in halacha that's not monetary, or is that also its own category, in which case you might have a third group that is neither of the two? That's a very interesting question. I'm going to do more research. Rafi, what do you say? Yeah? What does Rav Nuriel say? Let's hear it. You want to say it's really been on the chaver versus ben adol makom. Interesting. Just curious, other rabbeim sitting here, have any suggestions on what I meant by Rabbi Yisuri? It's an interesting question. What do you think? Really? All right, I'm going to do more research. Very interesting. Gabi, what do you think?
I don't know. I was going to say that's a question.
Okay, Judah?
I said the Siv has a shara that goes back and forth. What aspect of it particularly? It has to do with somebody had a dream that somebody else's meat wasn't kosher. So you think it's a Rav, Isser, and Heter question. The problem is he's costing someone else money. So sometimes the same case, a different angle could suddenly become DNA hummus. It's not a monetary case.
Okay, so okay, here we go, guys. We have two good questions here. Someone has to write a great article on this. Okay, here's the two good questions. One is, let's say I know what to do in category A, I know what to do in category B. One question is there a category C that fits into neither A? But I have another problem. Or Judah has the opposite problem. What if I have a case where I think is both A and B? Like a lot of monetary law relates to the world of Isser V'Heter. Like let's say I'm trying to figure out like a halacha about lending money with interest. Right? So certainly that's monetary, but there's certainly Isser V'Heter. Look, and there also. Okay, Yeshua. We're getting there in 1 second. We're getting there in 1 second, okay? We're good so far, guys? Okay, but in any case, so that's an excellent question. I'm going to file it for another time. Very good, Biyam. Okay, so we have a psak that it is voluntary. So apparently, why do we treat it so seriously? So we'll see it as shortly, but what happened over the course of Jewish history, apparently? We took it upon ourselves. For whatever reason, Am Yisrael decided we're going to take Marv seriously. So just like there's minhag to do all kinds of things, there's now a long-standing, centuries-old minhag to take Marv seriously, even though in its essence it is Rishos. But now the question emerges, does that still have halachic implications? So I'm going to argue that it has three major implications, which we'll see right now. I think the third one you'll find particularly interesting. Let's go back to my opening comment. This should be obvious now. Why is there no repetition of the Amidah for Marv? Again, what's the point of the repetition of Amidah, arguably? Well, there might be individuals present who don't know how to pray, and this gives them way to have someone will do an Amidah for them. They can listen carefully and fulfill their mitzvah that way. What can we then determine? We're going to only do that if it's an obligation. If it's not an obligation to begin with, it's not so crucial. So now we know. It might not be a little technical accent. There's no chazar or shots for Marv. That might reflect that in reality, Marv is not really obligatory. Okay, second example. You guys also, this coming second, Binyamin? Okay, we have an idea in halacha / agadah. We're very into what's called somech gula l'tefillah. We like the idea that Gal Yisrael should be immediately followed by Shemon Esrei. You know, it's an question like from a philosophical perspective, why do we care so much? If anyone's curious, I'm sorry guys, I haven't even advertised my book all year. There's a chapter in here on this topic. So you can go look it up. Did you get the Benzion? Okay, you dropped it. Okay, so now we're saying that the Gal Yisrael should be directly followed by the Amidah. Now, you might have noticed at some point in Shacharis we're incredibly zealous about this. The second you do say Gal Yisrael, what's the next thing you're doing? Shemon Esrei. Notice we get to Marv all of a sudden. We get very liberal about it. What happens after Gal Yisrael? Oh, let's sneak in another paragraph. What happens after that? Let's sneak in a Kaddish. If you're an Ashkenazi in Chutz La'aretz, you're saying this immensely long paragraph called Baruch Hashem L'Olam Amin V'Amein. Well, all of a sudden we seem to not care so much about juxtaposing Gula and Tefillah. Right? So what exactly happened over there that we don't care about? Now here, I have to thank David Berger for this. David Berger here? David Berger? Okay. But he's responsible for this anyway. Okay. There you go. Thank you, David. Okay, why? This is unfair, guys. I'm going to do it anyway. Who should we pick on here? Okay. What? Nofi. Nofi, how zealous are we about Gula Tefillah at Mincha?
Not at all.
Why? Why not? Just think, Nofi. Okay, Moshe Klein? Yeah, there is no Gula. Because what does Gula stem from? Gula is one of the brachot that surround Shema. So if there's not going to be Shema, there isn't going to be Gula. So there's no Shema at Mincha. So the question doesn't come up. It's not a good question how careful we at Mincha. Okay, but it does come up in Mar and... No, there's no Gula because there's no Shema. I mean, Gula is really a function of Shema. Then once you have Gula, you want to juxtapose it with Tefillah. Ben Tzir.
Don't we say that the paragraphs in between Shema and Amida are a continuation? So even if Shema's not there, the continuation.
Okay, here we go. So we get to that right now. So we do this outside, we're running out of time otherwise. Now, why are we less zealous about Gula, Tefillah, and Marav? Guys, give me three possibilities. So one possibility is that, before we get to that, we'll save that for last. Yitzi.
It's optional.
Okay, you guys are right. I wanted to say that for third. Okay, one possibility is that maybe Sion's right. We're not really less zealous. What if we view all those paragraphs we say as an extended Gula? Somehow Hashkivenu is part of Gula, and Kaddish is part of Gula. What would the claim be at that point? Yeah, we're doing it at Marv also. We're just extending, for whatever reason, we're doing a longer Gula theme at Marv. I know it's difficult to explain why Kaddish would be extended Gula, but it's worthy of looking into, not for us right now. Second possibility. So Elisha Galli said it. Very good. Elisha remembered maybe the whole Geula theme really matters in the morning, but not so much at night. It might be the real Geula from Mitzrayim was in the morning. Maybe morning gets associated with Geula in our tradition and not evening. That's the second possibility. But many of you noticed, what does Tosfot say? In general, we can be less careful about Marav because it's Rosh. There you go. So that might be another implication. So again, implication one, that might be why there's no Chazar Roshat. It probably is why there's not. Implication two, maybe we're just more liberal about Marav in general. We won't be so careful about Gula Tefillah. Binyamin.
But now that we've taken Marav on as Minhag Yisrael to be a chulba, why did they institute a chazar shot there? And is it a bracha v'tola if we did institute a
So apparently, it's a very good point, Binyamin. Apparently, even if we take it seriously as a minhag, apparently serious minhagim don't have the same status as a concrete chiyuv. But a concrete chiyuv is going to motivate a chazar shots, but a serious minhag is not going to motivate a chazar shots.
Would you say it's a bracha v'tola?
I think it would be a bad idea. Yeah.
So if concrete minhag, we're talking about the concrete minhag is not a mitzvah, then why do you so with the Mar where we have the 18 lines of Rosh before the Kaddish? Because we have they do that in America so much Gula. It's like a nation answer.
Oh, you know what? You're making assumptions about what Baruch Shalom is, which is debatable, so I'm going to leave it be for now. Okay, we're good? Okay, Nima, give me a second. Actually, Nima, you go first. You didn't get to speak yet.
Yeah, I have a question because why we don't do the Chazar Shas is because there is no chiyuv. That was one assumption. So, but what if somebody is in Ma'ariv and he can't pray, but he wants, it's no chiyuv, but he wants to do the mitzvah of...
Well, that was Binyamin's question. Could we do it if we wanted to? The Rambam implies that it would be a bracha l'vatala. Okay, third implication. As we said, guys, we always like to discuss women's issues. Let's discuss women and prayer for a second. Okay? The guys are going to love this because you have all three possibilities. How many tefillot do women have to pray every day? Either 1, 2, or 3. Every possibility is there. I guess zeros, not there. But either 1, 2, or 3. My wife is a very pious woman. She prays 3 times a day. You know what I always love, guys? When I go to weddings, at a wedding at some point Marv breaks out. So who's always at I always say it's like 80 men, my wife, and one other one. That's always what's happening. Next time you had a wedding with me, guys, check it out. That's what's happening at Marv there at the wedding. Now, how did we get to all three possibilities? That it could be once a day, twice a day, or 3 times a day. So let's get to Yeshua's point. Let's start with Rambam. Rambam thinks, till now, what's the assumption of our conversation? That the whole institutionalized obligation of prayer is D'Rabbanan. By the way, I phrase that very carefully. Even if you say all of Tefillah is D'Rabbanan, what do you mean? The institutionalization of prayer is D'Rabbanan. No one thinks that means nobody prayed till... That's what I mean this point. It's an important point. Of course, the concept of prayer existed beforehand. Like, read Chumash. A lot of people pray. But it could be that as a standardized obligation, it only started at the time of the Rabbanan. But the Rambam thinks that's not true. What does the Rambam think? There was a biblical mitzvah. What was the nature of the biblical mitzvah? Pray once a day. When? Oh, that's the Rambam. Who said that? Okay. You sure you have all this knowledge looking in the background there? It's just like slightly off. So it's to be aligned a little bit. That's the Rambam. But the Rambam thinks you have to pray once a day whenever you want. Okay, let's go back. Should women be chayiv in prayer according to the Rambam? No. Yes. Why? Why shouldn't they be chayiv? Women are chayiv in most mitzvot. There's this little category called mitzvot aseh shezman grama. that sometimes excludes them, but that should not apply to tefillah. It's not Zman Grama. It's not Zman Grama because what's the biblical mitzvah? To pray once a day, anytime. Everyone see that? So now, if you hold like the Rambam, why are women chayav to pray? Because prayer in its biblical nature is not Zman Grama. But when the rabbis then made more fixed times for prayer, that might not include women. So if you go with the Rambam, many Sephardi posts can take this approach. How many tefillot a day does a woman have to say? One. There it is. We got that? I'll give you 2 minutes. I want to finish this topic before I take comments. So that's why. Why would anyone think women should pray once a day based on that logic? The right aspect is not Zman Grama, and therefore women are included in that, but not in the Rabban. Okay, here's where things get really interesting, though. The Ramban says that's not why women have to pray. Those who read the Mishnah Berurah probably got this. According to Ramban, why do women have to pray? Anyone get this? Yeah, why do women have to pray, according to Ramban? What does the Ramban say? To me, it's a very powerful idea. Basically, for a human being turning to God in prayer, that's just fundamental to religious existence. Once that's true, women are obligated, whether or not it is. Ever see what just happened? Big difference. The Rambam says they're only obligated because there's an aspect that's not Zman Grama. What does the Ramban want to argue? Sometimes in the world, guys, other values will overcome the Zman Grama principle. In fact, this is a much deeper topic. You do philosophy of Judaism about women. Sometimes people make a big deal about the Zman Grama rule. You should just realize one thing. The Zman Grama rule has almost as many exceptions as it has things that fit the rule. It's a very unusual rule. If I remember correctly, it's like something like 8 to 6. Like if the game keeps going on, like the exceptions might be win in the fourth quarter. Like it's very close. I think like 8 things fit the rule and 6 things are exceptions to the rule. Okay, I might be the numbers off a little bit, but something like that. So what's the Ramban saying? Women are chayav not because it's not Zman Grama. Women are chayav because we don't apply the Zman Grama exemption to tefillah. 2 more points, guys. If you like the Ramban, in theory, how many prayers a day should women be chayav in? In theory, actually, guys, be a little bit more radical. In theory, 3, because what are you basically saying? There's no Zman Grama exemption regarding tefillah. So at that point, women and men should be the same. Indeed, I didn't put it on the sheet. If you look at the Aruch HaShulchan, the Aruch HaShulchan says women should pray 3 times a day. Okay, so now we get to the final intriguing thing, guys. We've now justified. If you go with the Rambam, we've explained why women would be obligated once a day. If you go with Aruch HaShulchan, we've explained why women would be obligated. Why in the world would the Mishnah Berurah tell Ashkenazi women to pray twice a day? Where in the world would that come from? So what's the Mishnah Berurah's argument? Is that Jacob Cooperstock?
That only the men have to daven marv to be brought to the
Exactly. This might be the third implication, guys. What if I say, really no one's chayav to daven marv? Because the real conclusion of the sugya was marv is Rashut. What happened over the course of Jewish history? Men decided to take it seriously. Men decided to make it obligatory, make it a minhag. But what if Jewish women over the last 1,000 years did not decide that? And indeed, women have been less zealous about davening marv over time. So what would that mean? Men took it then minhag and women not. By the way, it's not the only time. Give me one more thing, guys. Some of you might say to me that never happens in Jewish history. That men take it and women don't, or vice versa. That is totally not true. I've got a great example besides kippah. Okay. Oh, very good. How do you know I was going to go there, B'yam Zern? Excellent. This is good halacha tangent, guys. When women light Shabbos candles, not only that who lights, but what do we tend to assume? Okay, God, why might your mother ask you to say after she lights the kitchen? She might say to you, "Oh, I forgot to shut the light in the bedroom. Can you go do it?" Why is she saying that to you? Because we have the minhag that women take on Shabbos when they light candles. Now, let's say one of you guys, a couple of years ago, you guys have some apartment on, in Givat Shmuel, right? You're living together. You guys are in law school together there, and you're living together. You should also light candles, right? So you light Shabbos candles. It could be that minhag does not apply to men who light candles, right? Women have a minhag there except Shabbos. But when men like, they did not think the men, it could be like a gender-divided minhag. So that's the Mishnah Berurah. Men took on marv, women did not. That's why women should pray twice a day. So just to sum of this topic, I'll take comments, guys. Now, this is a great trivia answer. Someone says to you, of course, the fact that marv is Rashut has no implications. We say now there's 3 potential implications to marv being Rashut. A, no chazar Roshatz. B, don't be so zealous about Gula Tefillah. C, that could be why women are not obligated in marv. Okay, now comments. Yeshua. Okay, but there's 2 different Rambans. There's Ramban on a biblical level and Ramban on a rabbinic level. Can I just say, I'm going to do a little tangent for 1 second. Let me do a tangent for 1 second. This is good because there's a great Rav Soloveitchik piece here, guys. Those who like existential philosophy will like this idea. Okay, here we go. I said before the Rambam thinks prayer is a daily biblical obligation, and Ramban does not, which is true. But Yeshua is right. The Ramban thinks there is one scenario you're biblically obligated to pray. What's that scenario? 8 Sarah. if it's a time of distress, then even the Ramban would agree that biblically, give me 1 second, Jake, okay? So, but that's not the rabbinic obligation. The rabbinic obligation is more concrete than that. That's on a biblical level. But here's the beautiful idea, guys. If you know Soloveitchik's philosophy, you get it right away. What does it sound like the debate between Rambam and Ramban is? Ramban says, when do you have to pray biblically? When you're in a crisis. According to Rambam, when do you have to pray biblically? Every day. Even when? Okay, guys, think a little deep here, guys. Soloveitchik says Rambam and Ramban really agree. What does Rambam say? Every day is an existential crisis. Right? We all have our issues, our frustrations, our strivings. There is a daily crisis. That should motivate you to turn to God. Okay, isn't that interesting? So if you look it up, Soloveitchik says this explicitly. Everyone agrees it's born in crisis. What's the machloket? Ramban says it's only this kind of external crisis when you're really in physical danger. That's what motivates the chiyuv to pray. Rambam says the day-to-day vicissitudes of human existence is the kind of crisis that should make you turn to God in prayer. No, you like that? Okay, Binyamin.
How does the Ramban use the chatzor throat to prove that you need David?
Okay, so there is. Wow, it's amazing. Amazing what the Zimmerman brothers picked up there in TBC. Okay, Binyamin, I'm constantly shocked. Like you simultaneously hated high school and learned a ton there. Okay, maybe there's a relationship actually. Okay, but in any case, where would the idea that there's a chiyuv to pray Beit Sarah come from? So there's a pasuk about the chatzotzrot in Parshat Balotcha. They would blow the chatzotzrot when it was Zman Milchama or a thing like that. What if I view blowing the chatzotzrot as some kind of tefillah kind of endeavor? So then what am I saying? When there's a Milchama or something like that, that's when you turn to God. Okay, so you're right. That's a good question. Like, why would it only be that part of the psukim? You're right. That's a very good question. You know, we'll look at the Ramban later. That's a very good question. Ben Zion.
If we're viewing the bracha after Shema as an extension, then there's really no implication number 2 without being so much of a tefillah. So I don't understand how that's such a big implication.
You're right. I just mentioned it as a possibility. It's not. There's other ways to explain what's happening there. There are other ways to explain why we're not so careful on the night. There are other ways to explain.
But I'm saying even if you don't view it as an extension, then it really isn't an argument anyway because there's no Shema Mincha. So
No, at Marv though. Maybe we're not so zealous about Gula Tefillah and Marv because it's a Rishon anyway.
Zealous of Marv than we are Mincha.
Well, we're not. No, Mincha is not a player in the competition. You can't be zealous or not zealous if there's no Gula theme.
I see.
Mincha's not entered the competition. Okay, Shachris is in first place, Marv's in second place. Mincha's playing a different sport. Okay.
We're not zealous in Marv than we are in Shachrit.
Yes, we are because we have all these added paragraphs. We have Hashkivenu, we have Kaddish.
I guess more so than Shachrit.
Okay. Yeah, Moshe.
So two questions. One very quickly. Quick one is, can women daven shachrit at night according to the Rambam?
Can women daven Shachrit at night?
According to the Rambam.
Well, I wouldn't even call it Shachrit. I mean, according to the Rambam, women should daven the Amidah once a day. It's pretty much the same Amidah.
Oh, so they'll just daven near us.
I mean, if you go with the Rambam, women should pray the Amidah once a day. Whenever they choose to do so.
Oh, but it doesn't matter which.
Look, how they should put there's the other parts of Tefillah is a good question. Like, according to Rambam, what should women's role be in terms of Sukkot Zimra and Birkat HaShachar, but not for us right now. Okay?
The same question is, if we just found the middle of reading the mention of saying Shana of Dali Mara, so that we actually came a Chobah, then shouldn't we be like stringent on doing other shots in the Mara and
No, but that's what Binyamin asked. But I want to argue, Minhagim are very serious in Judaism. They're still not the same as a concrete Chiyuv D'Rabbanan. A Chiyuv D'Rabbanan is more weighty than a Minhag.
But by now it's come to the clear that like.
But it's still not the same? Yeah, Yitzi.
Going off Moshe's first question, that wouldn't even include Shema, which is sort of
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm going to avoid the other women's tefillah questions, okay? Some other time. Okay, guys, before we get to the dramatic conclusion of this year, I want to raise one other question that I'm not going to have a chance to deal with just because of limited time. But there is an argument to be made that when the Gemara says Rashut, it's not really so serious that it means Rashut. It's not really just a free-for-all. Because think about some of the following things. There's a Gemara that talks about the case of Tashlumin. What's Tashlumin? If I miss something, I should make it up. I slept through Mincha one day, I'll daven Marv twice. The Gemara says if I slept through Marv one day, what should I do the next morning? So it says Tosfot and the Rosh. Wait, I don't understand. You told me that Arvit is a Rashut. If it's Rashut, why in the world would I bother? Usually you only have a makeup date for things that are obligatory. When you have a makeup date for something that is voluntary to begin with. So that might shake up the whole idea that it really was Rashut. To throw out one theory out there, some of you saw this, what did Tosfot want to argue? It's not really Rashut, it's just that it gives way before any other value. Like if I have a clash between Marv and any other mitzvah would be Marv. But I don't really have a good distracting reason. then I actually am obligated in Mar. I don't want to get into that because it's going to complicate things. Just realize there is a theory out there that Rashut never really meant Rashut. Okay, and there are some good arguments for it. One was the Tashlumin, one was the Yalv Yavo, which I'm not getting into right now. Okay. Yes, Josh Goldman.
Every mitzvah comes before Marav?
I'm sorry?
Every mitzvah comes
Except for Josh Goldman. Except for one thing, Tosfot did say, he used the phrase overet. Why did Tosfot use the phrase overet, and what does it mean? Any other mitzvah which has a urgency quality to it. If it's a mitzvah I can do it any other time, then Marav would still be placed. You're right, though, Josh, you're right. So it's like the Marav would be like, the Pittsburgh Pirates of mitzvah, right? That it would always lose out, all things being equal to the competition. Okay, I wasn't sure what to go with there. Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Okay. Benjamin, what would you gone with there?
the Pirates are pretty good.
Okay. All right, so let's go to the last theory, guys. Now, what do we say this whole shiur? The simplest way to explain why Marav would be Rashut would be to link it with the carbon theme. From a carbon perspective, it's easy to explain why Shachris and Mincha are separate from Marav. But from the other perspective, they should all be the same. Let's just challenge that at the end. So I'm going to go to the last page, guys. So the Meshech Chacham and Rav Tzadok and Pulbin. Okay, this will be the closing idea. Okay, here we're going to have a nice integration of, halacha, machshava, it'll all come together. Okay, the Meshech Chacham again is Rav Meir Simcha Cohen from Vince, lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Author of the Or Sameach on the Rambam and the Meshech Chacham on Chumash. Says the Meshech Chacham, okay, this is Breshit Memvav. Yaakov is about to go down to Egypt. That's important context there. How does God appear to him? Notice the phrase? In a vision of the evening. Hine eitzel Avram Yitzchak lo matzanu zeh rak b'Yaakov kan uvayetzei. So he notices something very interesting. Yaakov seems the only patriarch who has what? Nighttime revelations. What's Yaakov's other nighttime revelation? Besides when he's going down to Egypt? Vayetzei. Notice what's the common denominator both to them? He is leaving the land of Israel. So maybe it's not an accident. Yaakov has two nighttime revelations. Both times when he's about to leave Eretz Yisrael. Let's keep going. Hainu mifnei shayamuchan latzeit l'chutzartz lagur. L'chein ba'alav hitgalut elokib b'layla. L'harot she'af b'layla b'cheshkar hagalut shoreh shechina b'Yisrael. Very interesting. What does he want to claim? It's obvious image, you guys. Any poet would come up with this. Night is going to represent the difficult parts of human existence. So nighttime could represent going into exile. What is the point of this? You might think you're going to exile, you can only have a connection with God. Some of that ability to contact God would only be in the land of Israel. So Yaakov has these nighttime revelations, which is a way of saying you could still link with God somehow. You can still have this moment of hitgalut even when you go abroad. But how does that work? Let's keep reading. Okay. Notice what you said. Somebody brought in that Gemara about Marav, and even the carbon theme. We'll get to the point in 1 second, guys. Okay. Okay, now things are about to get brilliant. Okay, there's a famous question, which is, can you have prophecy outside of the land of Israel? As I said, the land of Israel is where there's most intimate connection with the divine is. So maybe prophecy is limited to the land of Israel. Now, there's a problem with saying that, because if one ever learns Sefer Yechezkel, what does one discover? Yechezkel prophesizes in Babel. So it can't be that there's never a case of Nebuah outside of Eretz Yisrael. So there are various answers. What are some of the answers? Okay. So the claim is if you forged that kind of connection in Israel, you could then bring that connection to outside of Israel. So Yechezkel forged that connection in Israel, then he was able to have prophetic revelation outside. But now, get the most brilliant part, guys. Ready? If we skip to after the ellipsis, Umizeh Yetzilenu. Now all the halach and machshav and lamdas is all going to come together. Umizeh Yetzilenu Musar Haskel. Shakasher Yisrael Ochzim El HaKabal Nuta. If we hold on to our tradition, V'ochin B'dakev Limud Avotechem, we identify with what happened before. We're continuity of the Jewish values. Az Yisraeli Ugoy Eitan Atik Yomin Asher Niglu Elav Elokim Biyot HaMikdash HaMechono. Az Shora Shechina Imahem Gam B'chutzos. What does he want to claim? You can have divine revelation outside of Israel. You can find God outside. But when? When you are in somehow an authentic continuity of what he just did. Let's put it all together, guys. We take this idea. How could Yechezkel be an Navi in Chutz La'aretz? Because he's continuing something that started in Israel. Now, he wants to make that on a collective plane. How can Am Yisrael encounter God in Chutz La'aretz? Because we're still identifying with what we did over here. Why does that fit into our whole topic? Let's go back to carbon. This is very clever, actually, guys. Because now the avot theme and the carbon theme are going to integrate. Yaakov is the symbol of what? The ability to take that connection and bring it in, even into Chutz La'aretz, even into the nighttime. He's the Av who spends time in Egypt. He's the one who has these nighttime visions. That's what Yaakov represents. But if you think about it, that's even the carbon theme. I told you before, we don't really offer sacrifices at nighttime. So if I ask you, if you walk into the Beit Mikdash one day and see stuff on the Mizbech at nighttime, and I say to you, well, what's going on? We don't offer sacrifices at nighttime. What's the answer? Why is it okay? Because it's the continuity of what happened in the daytime. So the carbon theme and the Av theme now integrate. Right? What is nighttime about? Nighttime is about the difficult aspects of existence, the goal aspects of existence. But we're able to address that if we're able to link with what happened before. If we're able to be the continuity of what happened before, then we could find God even in the nighttime / goal aspects of human existence. Everyone good so far? Okay, now we're going to take things one step further. Okay, here, unusual Shiur Klali, maybe a little Hasidic in the answer here, guys. Okay, so as you guys know, I'm a little partial to Rav Tzadok HaKohen from Lublin. I like this thought very much. So Rav Tzadok HaKohen says, Mariv is a symbol for the nighttime of human existence. Right? Darkness, difficulty. What is prayer all about? Prayer is about the ability to stand before God, to be Omid L'fnei Hashem. Arguably, by the way, prayer has that more than any other tefillah we say. I'll give you an example, guys. An interesting example. We're more zealous about clothing for Amidah than for Shema. I'm pretty sure if you look it up, as long as your private parts are covered, you could daven Shema bare-chested. But we would say you can't say the Amidah unless you're wearing a shirt. Now, why would we be more, if Shema is D'Oraita and Tefillah is probably D'Rabbanan, why would we be more zealous about the laws of Tefillah than Shema? Exactly, because it's not just about D'Oraita and D'Rabbanan, it's about the quality of what I'm doing. Shema is an assertion, but an assertion is not the same as a dialogue with God. Right? I don't address God in Shema. Right? Tefillah is about standing before God. That's the Amidah. If you're standing before God, you can't come to God bare-chested. It's not respectable. You could assert things bare-chested, but you can't stand before God. So Tefillah is Omid L'fnei Hashem. Let's go back to Rav Tzadok. What does Rav Tzadok want to say? We all know that prayer is hard. It's not easy to create this feeling of standing before God. If Marv represents the nighttime of existence, what can one argue? It is more difficult in the night times of our existence to be Omid L'fnei Hashem. Says Rav Tzadok, that is why Tefillah is not a chiyuv and Marv, but is only a reshut. Halach understood. It's true that we took it on as a minhag. But Halach understood that in the night times of human existence, it's difficult to create this experience of Omid L'fnei Hashem. Now let's put it all together. If we put Rav Tzadok and the Meshech HaChacham, then I'll take closing comments. If we put Meshech HaChacham and Rav Tzadok together, what do you have? Even from the avot theme, we can now come with a reason why. Because again, what does Meshech HaChacham say? Yaakov is not the same as Abraham and Yitzchak. What does Yaakov represent? This struggle to connect to God even when life's more difficult, even when you're in exile, when you're in Galut. That's what Yaakov represents. That's the quality of the Marv Tefillah. We then combine it with Rav Tzadok, we could say, that's a more difficult endeavor. Since that's a more difficult endeavor, that's why Halacha did not mandate it to begin with. Yeah, Moshe Klein.
What are they really opposed with? What is that, those things really opposed with salvation and Rabban thing? Because Rabban says that you should especially pray the Eitzah around. You have actually a chiyuv to pray.
That's a fascinating point. That's a very clever question. You could cut both ways with it. You could say that distressing times make prayer easier and make it harder. But I think they're both true. But, you could say, you could go experientially, they're both true, right? But you have a great point, Moshe Klein. Moshe, put this in the safer one day, okay? One day you write a safer called the Torah Moshe, even though a lot of people have taken that away. You could go with it anyway. You could be like the fourth Torah Moshe, it's okay? Okay, or what else can you go with? Moshe. I'll think about some other names in a second. But according to Moshe Klein, it's an interesting point. What would emerge? On a biblical level, according to Ramban, distress is more of an obligation in prayer. But if Rav Tzadok's right on a rabbinic level, the difficult times actually creates a lesser obligation. Like how those two themes would live together is very interesting, Moshe. Very interesting. All right, we'll do the last summary. Yeah.
I just don't understand how compelling this argument is because we don't ever rule that just because something is difficult, you don't have to do it. I mean, Kibbutz Avayim is pretty difficult, but we're still required to do that, for example.
Okay, well, first of all, it is true that difficulty per se is not a reason to drop something, but that idea does come from halacha. This would be a good Shiur Klali topic, in fact. Ever heard the following phrase? There's a phrase in Gemara that appears a couple times called Lo nitna Torah l'malchei hasharet. What would that phrase mean? Lo nitna Torah l'malchei hasharet? And how does one use that as a halachic argument? If you have an obligation that's just too hard to fulfill, it can't be that halacha would demand it. So you're right, but the mere fact that something's hard doesn't mean we should drop it by definition. But there is an idea that difficulty should be a factor in.
It's a nice idea that it's harder at nighttime, and what nighttime represents a time of stress. But practically speaking, during the day and during the night, if you're not in a difficult situation, there's no real difference.
I hear what you're saying. Look, let me sum up the whole shiur and I'll agree with this. Let's agree that the Pnei Yeshua's theory is probably more convincing than the theory I developed based on the Meshech Chochmah and Rav Tzadok. But what's more convincing is nothing what's more intriguing and interesting than Zion. Okay, I find the Meshech Chochmah Rav Tzadok theory more intriguing and interesting. But I hear what you're saying. I agree the Pnei Yeshua is simple. Let's do like a 2-minute review, guys. We're done. You guys were great today. Quick 2-minute review. Okay, Machloket is whether it's in the Gemara is whether it's Chiyav or Rashut. What are the 2 reasons to paskin Rashut? 2 reasons to paskin Rashut. Someone help us out here. Give us a volunteer. Okay, Jared. No, not the rationale in terms of the. Sorry, let me clarify. Not the philosophical or halachic explanation. Just practically, how should I rule based on the machloket? What are Tosfos 2 reasons to rule that? We'll get to you in a second, Jared. So what are Tosfos 2 reasons to rule it's a rashut? If the Gemara didn't conclude, why should I prefer the rashut option to? Not in terms of the rationale, just in terms of rules of psak. Moshe Klein. 1, because tefillah is Rabbanan, and 2, because that's the position of Rav. Excellent. Now we'll get to Jared's point. But philosophically or halachically, why should it be a rashut? Jared, first approach to the Pnei Yeshua? Because the carbon theme, the Marv, is not as serious a carbon as the first 2. According to Rav Tzadok and Meshech Chochmah, what else can you develop? Even in the Yaakov theme, you could claim that's the distress in Gula times. It's more difficult to approach God, to stand before God. Excellent. What are the 3 implications of the fact that if we're really going to be we treat it like an obligation, we men take it seriously? What are the 3 implications of Marv being rashut nonetheless? A, no chazar shots. B, Kul Tefillah. C, women. Excellent. You guys are just excellent. Okay, just to sum the last point to the Ben Zion, it is true that the Pnei Yeshua might be more convincing. Now, I just said, but I think the Meshech Chochmah Tzadok is more intriguing. I'll say something else, guys. Sometimes there's the following split. Something might not be shot in a